This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Welcome back, everyone. Oh yeah, this might stay, might not, but either way, I've got 3 awesome projects that I want to share with you guys. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit mail today, but I'm going to do this a little bit differently in that I want to tie it into a context. And I want to talk about the idea of photography as a process, as this type of journey, because I think all 3 of these projects really personify that in different ways. So the first time that you pick up a camera, you are starting at square one. And most of us are just trying to get a feel for the camera. We're trying to get some kind of composition, figure out what the buttons do, how it exposes, very beginner stuff. And then as we progress, we start building on that momentum, and then we learn new things. And sometimes we go through peaks and valleys where we feel like we've got a lot of tailwind, we're doing really cool stuff, and then we hit a wall, and we just can't get past it. And so you have to find a way to get over that wall. But my point of this whole thing is as we tend to develop over the years as photographers, we hopefully become a little bit better than we were the day we started. I know that certainly is the case for me. I was terrible for a long time. I had an immense passion for it and an immense drive, and that's what propelled me forward, and eventually I started doing better work. But it is an iterative process. In other words, you have to kind of practice things over and over to start to learn and understand and get the visual language, so to speak, ingrained in your mind, and this is what we call the journey. And if you don't enjoy that journey, it makes photography a very difficult thing, one, to actually keep doing, but also to improve and build on. And so this is what I want to talk about in the concept, or in the context of all the work that we're looking at today. So this first one that I want to show you, this is a zine, and it is a really large zine, and it is only 8 photographs. And I want to share this with you because I think it's very cool. So this comes to us from João Flecha and his partner Filipa, and they live in Lisbon, Portugal. And they run a small design studio, and this is their project, which is called 1,000 Words Volume 1. And João writes, "The project 1,000 Words aims to be a place for photography and photography only, in different mediums, from film to digital, color to black and white, from street photography to fashion photography, landscape, portrait, no words, just photography. We chose this inconvenient size format on purpose to expose as much of the image as we can. It's not perfect, it's a process." And that is the key point that I want to make about this, that it's not perfection, it is a process. So what's really cool about this, first of all, as you can probably already tell, this is not a cheap printing job. This is extremely nice printing. It's also really big, and I can tell you behind the scenes, he doesn't say this in his letter, this is not cheap to make. This is very costly. And I like the fact that it's very simple, and he's starting slow. So I'm going to paraphrase a little of this letter because it is kind of long. But 2 takeaways that I want to give. First of all, this was done in collaboration with a print shop in the north of Portugal who helped us in every step of production, and that made all of the difference. Second point that's made later in this letter is our goal is to gradually leave the set, so to speak, and let other authors step in and present their work. The aim is to be global, and so if you find our project interesting, please share our contacts, and I'll do that below. But they want to open this up to other voices and other photographers. So I want to make comments on those 2 things. First off, the printing. And I think this is really important because I think as photographers, the whole idea of photography is something that is very individualistic. You have your own voice of what you want to say artistically, and then you put that to work. And so we kind of tend to manage every step of that process, from actually deciding what we're going to shoot, to actually shooting, to actually doing the edit, and then we have our finished photographs. And so when it comes to things like printing, I think it is extremely important to start involving experts. And I've talked a little about this in videos before. I used to do a lot of collaboration. Well, used to. I would like to do some more, and we've talked about it with my friend Matt Beatty, who owns a print studio out in Flagstaff, Arizona. The reason I like working with Matt is he is way more knowledgeable about doing platinum palladium stuff than I will ever be. And so not only are you bringing somebody in who's an expert on something, but you're also getting a second pair of eyes who can make small suggestions, kind of catch little things that might be strange about a project. So I think that collaborative effort is something that does not come natural to photographers per se, but I think it's something that's really important in the long run, and you can see in the print quality in this zine. It is absolutely outstanding. The next point, which is very important, is that even though this is very short, in other words, it's only 8 images, there's a couple ways they probably could have gone about this. They could have thrown a bunch of images at it, gone with a cheaper or lesser print quality, and then just made a bigger zine. However, I don't think it would have had the same impact because I love the fact that this is printed large. It is an interruption. It's also not so thick that you can't hold it, and it leaves you wanting to see more. I love the whole idea of 1,000 words, and each one of these spreads, each one of these images leaves a bit of a question to the viewer. I think it's just really nicely done. I love the low light, the moodiness of it. I like the way things are paired up. It's really nice. So 1,000 Words Volume 1 ends up being a bit of a prototype to something that's going to be a bigger idea to involve more people and more content down the line. I think that took an enormous amount of restraint to do, and even, I hesitate to call this a demo because it really is nice, and it's not just a demo. I mean, this makes a great volume 1. That way, once you have a bunch of volumes down the road, you can always look back in the super duper collector's edition that only had 8 images that's worth like $6,000 on Amazon used or whatever. I mean, you've got that, and I think it's really cool. It leaves you wanting more, and it leaves you looking for the next issue and propelling forward. Anyway, this is all about process. It's all about that journey that I was talking about earlier. So João and Filippa, excellent work. Thank you for sharing. Okay, next up is a book that comes to us from Stockholm, Sweden. This is from Nils Onman, I think is how you say him. It's called, I'm going to butcher this because I do not speak Swedish, 100 Dagars Vintermörker. It means 100 days of winter darkness. Going dark on this one. And Nils writes, Dear Ted, winter is coming, darkness is here. The lack of light will make it tempting to put our cameras up on a shelf and wait for spring, and the winter darkness might even make us somewhat depressed. I live in Stockholm, Sweden, and up here in the north, winter is really dark. In the beginning of November, the sun is only 16 degrees above the horizon at noon, and the day is just 8 hours and 45 minutes. And at winter solstice, it's only up 6 hours, and at noon, it's just 7 degrees above the horizon. In 2018, I decided that I had to have a project during the 100 darkest days, from November 2nd to February 9th, a real challenge. I had to take a photo every day, but when the sun was down, and I had to take a unique picture every day. I had to cheat and set up my camera to take a picture when I left Sweden for Egypt, but I made a book with 1 picture a day, and maybe it can inspire other followers of your channel in the coming winter. Nils, this is awesome, and what I love about it, back again into the whole idea of photography as a journey, is setting up a project where you're doing a shot every day like that. Now, I'm not a huge fan of what we call the 365 project. If you're not familiar with what that is, it basically means for an entire year, you're going to do a brand new photo every day for 365 days. 2 things I typically don't like about that. 1, there's not enough guidelines around it, and so everything's just kind of arbitrary. And 2, it's actually really hard to do. Most people will fail and not finish the whole thing. I've tried it, and you make it like a month, and then life intervenes, and it just becomes very difficult. But what I really love that Nils has done here is there is a concept around this. So the whole idea of addressing 100 days of darkness, all these shots are shot in the dark. So there is a concept that binds everything together when we talk about that journey. So it makes it way more cohesive. Side note, one of the things that I really love about this is when you look at the images, and what you see is Nils exploring the idea compositionally of light sources. And so basically we don't have any light coming from the sky. We're not shooting in daylight. So we're having to deal with ambient night light sources. And so I think the direction that light comes in is very important to this project. I think it's really interesting, the juxtaposition of the viewer and things that are blurred out. Some of it gives you some disorientation in what you're actually looking at. And I think this is just so well done. This is not an easy project to do. And again, it's a journey type project because it's going to go on for 100 days, and the whole idea of doing a photo a day. Anyway, I think Nils has done a brilliant job on this, and it fits right in with what we're talking about. So awesome work. I'm going to link to this in the show description below. Thank you for sharing, Nils. I've got one more book that is quite good that I want to share with you that talks about this whole idea of photography as a journey. But real quick, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor today, who are the awesome folks over at Squarespace.com. Listen, you need a website, and we all know how much work that is to build and maintain, but it doesn't have to be. Squarespace is by far the easiest way to build your online presence. It's also the best way to grow a business that works for you without having to write a single line of code. Do you just need a simple portfolio or a blog to showcase your work? Well, Squarespace is perfect. Featuring a drag-and-drop interface, it's intuitive, it allows you to build galleries quickly and update your site with ease. Are you running a business? Well, Squarespace gives you additional tools for things like appointment scheduling, private member areas, social media tools, and even advanced email marketing. Do you sell products or services? Well, Squarespace has you covered with complete tools to power your store, from merchandising to checkout, so that you can sell, ship, and build your customer base. You can even sell classes or manage appointments through your website. And with Squarespace extensions, you can easily sync with third parties to manage, optimize, and enhance your website. From social media integration to SEO, Squarespace gives you all the tools you need to grow a business that works for you. So head over to Squarespace and sign up for the free trial. Start with one of their award-winning templates and see what you can create and just how good you're going to look. When you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/AOP and I can save you an additional 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Just use offer code AOP on checkout. So give it a try and see if Squarespace is right for you. And I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. All right, so next up we have this wonderful book called Portfolio One, and this comes to us from Jonathan Laney. I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit. He is from Oregon, and during the course of 2018 to 2019, he went and did a lot of traveling for work. So this acts as a portfolio, but I think really more importantly, it acts as a bit of a travel log and somewhat of a journal. And I want to flip through this a little bit and show you some of the beautiful images that are in here. So a couple things that I really like about this. First of all, the balance between color and black and white. I think it's pretty clear that Jonathan has a big inspiration that he draws from film photography, even though most of this is digital, but it has a really film type look to it. And I love the color rendition on here. And I think the black and whites have really nice contrast. It's really nicely done. Another thing that I like is a lot of this stuff was done at night, similar to the last book. And so it creates a different ambiance, a lot different mood and attitude. And I think this is just really cool, the way this is contrasted through various places. I like the fact that the locations are listed on here. One thing I'm going to be honest that I'm not crazy about, Jonathan, is that, and this is super nitpicky, and I'm sorry I'm critiquing you on this, but I called somebody out on the last video too. I would prefer the camera and lens info, even though I'm a nerd and you're using Leicas and all the things that I love. I would prefer that to be on a list in the back if it needs to be there. The problem that I have is that I'm looking through the images and I'm looking more at the lens you're using or the camera that you used rather than just enjoying the pictures. Now, I say that as a compliment because I think the work is really strong in here and it just doesn't need it. In other words, like I said, I'm really not trying to be negative and calling you out on that, but I think it's just one thing that needs to have the book breathe a little bit. Now, one thing I will say, and this is why it makes critiquing kind of hard to do in this context, is I don't really know what Jonathan's intention was with this book. If the intention of the book is just to have a reminder of your own travels, then sure, all those personal notes, they're totally relevant, and they may be relevant to you to remember what you did in certain things because you're looking at that book very differently than somebody who has not seen the work before, which would be me in this case. And since you sent it in to share with everybody, if you're making your book public, what I would do is I think the photographs have to be the central voice of everything. You know, if we go back to the first zine that I showed, and it was 8 images with no words. I mean, there's no distractions between you and the photography. It is a narrative. It is telling you a story as you go through the pages. And that's what I'm seeing here, but I get distracted with the text. The only other criticism I have on this, and it may be even a little bit harsher criticism, is as many times as you came to Texas in here, you never came to Fort Worth so I could go buy you a coffee or a beer, because this work really is excellent, and that's the compliment I want to give Jonathan in this. It's a really nicely done book. And I have to say, even, this is a blurb book, and blurb is up in their game with the print quality, I have to say, because this is actually very nicely done. But my point is, with all 3 of these books, they represent ways of expressing that journey of photography. And I think this is one thing that fascinates me because it is a process that is inevitable. We all have to go through it. And I think sometimes it's frustrating when you're not feeling like your skills are as evolved as they should be. I mean, I know this happens to me at least. And that process does become frustrating. But I think at the same time, coming up with projects like what we've seen here and finding ways to enjoy that journey and be able to look back on it and embrace some of your own nostalgia, I guess I'm trying to say, I think is really important. And I think it's important to be able to document that because it really is about the journey. If it were just, figure this out and you're a great photographer, it'd be really boring and nobody would probably continue to do it because there was no challenge. So we do want that challenge in there. Anyway, I would love to hear from you guys if you have any comments on this, and we'll do this a little bit more in the future. I'm trying to shake up the mail videos a little bit just to bring them into some more context. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, later.